Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel, and we are covering the US Chess Championships, or the Masters, or whatever it's called. The top players in America battling out, 14 players, 13 rounds. Gonna be absolutely insane. Only 2 decisive results in the first round, but one of them had a rook sacrifice. So we're gonna start with Fabiano Caruana with the white pieces versus Grigoriy Oparin. Fabi starts the game with d4, knight to f6, c4, e6, and he allows a Nimso Indian defense. One of the most critical tests of the white position. We get queen c2, d5, a3, bishop takes, and now on move 6, b takes c3. You might say, what's so special about that? Majority of games go queen takes. Majority of games. B takes is such a rare move in this particular position. It has been played, of course. Now c6, knight to f3, b6, bishop to g5, which gets kicked back, knight bd7, e3, short castles, and now g4. Fabiano Caruana comes, and he comes to win. When you're playing a tournament like this, you have to make use of all of your white games. G4 to me is just so insane. You haven't castled, but Fabi's saying I don't need to castle. Your knight's pinned, right? So you obviously cannot take this. And then I'm going to look to crack open in the center. So we queen e8, getting out of the pin, but now g5. And the only move here is to take the pawn, which happens, and we get knight takes. Now we're threatening mates if your knight moves. Obviously, you might want to go there, but that loses a pawn at the moment. That's mate, if not for the knight. e5 now, a beautiful move. Fabiano Caruana just didn't castle, right? So this move is perfect because you're striking at the center. You're looking to activate pieces because your bishop never really got out. But you could get it out this way. So, critical position for black, but Fabi's better. If he plays one of the following moves, he has to play c takes d5 or rook g1. He plays c takes d5, and now, to be completely winning, he must play rook to g1, but he plays, an okay move, bishop to b5. The ancient doesn't hate it that much. It's just not the best move, but it is a good move. You're pinning this knight to the queen. So now there is a future where you take this and damage the structure, and rook g1 becomes all that more powerful. Black's position is hanging on a knife edge. e4, though. e4 is a great move. You would have thought, I want to take and open up the center. No. This move closes the queen off. Very, very clever idea. And obviously you're not going to play f3 in the future because take, and then this is a problem. But it does just make your position a little bit more difficult. Because this pin exists. To break it is really difficult without stepping into this pin. And rook g1 is a great idea. And there's still the position you could long castles. So Fabiano Caruana, much better here. Rook to g1. Bishop to b7. Knight to h3. Look at that. Now I am threatening to take this. Because you can't take because of the pin. So we get knight to h7. Looks like you're holding on. You're not. Look at the advantage. It's swelling every move. Queen e2 now. I'm coming in here. Not there. There. Mate. I'm threatening to take everything. Queen c8 though. Steps out of the pin, yes. But now look at this move from Fabiano Caruana. The most disrespectful move I've ever seen in my life. King to d2. No castling for me. I've connected my rooks. And knight to c5. Very clever idea. I see this. So if you take this, I take your knight. Very clever idea. But it doesn't work. D takes c5, queen takes h3. Queen h5. You might say, well, what's the threat? Let's say I play queen f3. If queen f3, queen h6. Threatening mate. If you play g6, then I have this move, I have c6, which pushes your bishop back, but I also have rook g3. And I don't care if you take that, because I come back with the bishop. And you are bust. So queen h5, beautiful find from Fabiano Caruana. g6 gets played immediately, but now I have c6. And not only do I have c6, but Fabiano Caruana sacrifices the rook. Rook takes g6, f takes g6, queen takes, king moves over, and now the only winning move, rook to g1. Game over. Bishop to g4, one final defense, I just take it. King defense, but bishop to g3, threatening bishop to e5, and all sorts of mates. Fabiano Caruana wins, and I think he's looking to try and win this tournament 3 times in a row, which is, an insane feat when you think about it. But that was not the only result. Ladies and gentlemen, that was not the only result of the day. There was one other. And it's between 2 people with interesting stories. You've got Levon Aronian. Wasn't born an American, was from, I believe, Armenia. Now an American, one of the highest rated players in the world, versus one of the uprising prodigies of the world, Andy Woodward, despite the fact that Vladimir Kramnik has accused him of cheating. But we're not talking about that today. Andy Woodward's got the white pieces. He plays d4. We get d5. And Levon Aronian goes for a Slav, and I don't know if it's having a bit of a revival, but I've seen it a lot more in recent times than it has been in the past few years. And they play some normal stuff, and by normal stuff I mean they shuffled their pieces around like I've never seen before. But it's all development. You might say, well, what was the point of this knight maneuver? Couldn't tell you. I wasn't able to watch the broadcast live because I was studying for a test. Hopefully I'll be able to watch around 2. I would assume it's because these are the 2 key squares you're trying to control. Because black would like to play e5 and they would like to play c5. So you're trying to control those 2 key pawn breaks. And this exchange is always beneficial for white. And yes, the queens are just staring at each other. You would rather be taken than take the opponent. Queen takes b3 and this. Now knight to a6. And now knight to f4. We maneuver this knight once again. Get it out of the way because we would like to grab the bishop. That bishop is basically dead. So knight to b4, bishop to e2, a5. Short castles. Move 15 short castles because they're GMs. Now we grab the bishop, now that you've castled. We didn't want to grab it earlier because then you could take like this and then the h file is open. With the queens off the board, it's not as much of a risk, but it's still something you don't need to do. So we get h takes g6, and now rook a1, knight to c2, just planting a nice knight to knight square, rook a b1, knight to b4, and now rook fc1, rook fd8, and they begin to maneuver. And we find that you've got this interesting structure, where black has got these 3 connected pawns, and they've got this chance of an outside pass pawn if you can trade right. But it's kind of interesting. Black has still got these 2 pawn breaks, and obviously white's got dominant central control. They've got 2 center pawns. But it's really about who can maximize their pieces the most. White has got 2 bishops. Bishops like open positions. This position is very closed. So if you can find great squares for these knights, black is going to be chilling. In fact, if you can go here, you should not play this. Let's say, for example, we get knight to b6. This is a bad idea. The engine thinks it's... Why is it +1? Knight takes d5. Knight takes d5. Oh, because you lose the pawn. So, not right away. Sorry, I missed that completely. Anyway, knight to c5. A move that looks impossible, but it's a very simplistic idea. You take here and damage your structure, and I also grab your bishop. So we get bishop to d1, and now e5. Black really activating their pieces. Levon Aronian showing, I am one of the best players in the world. You're not yet. So let me show you how it's done. Knight to e2. And now we take in the center, force the knight back. Bishop to c3, bishop to g5 targets the rook, forces it to move. And now we go here. It is still a very draw-ish position. And quite frankly, you would imagine most players would draw this position when you get here. Because You might say white has winning chances, but this pawn will be corralled. Black does not have winning chances because their pawn is doubled. And this is a weakness that you've got to defend, and it's really difficult to, because when the rook comes here, all you can do is push it forward. But then it can still fall. So, we drop the knight back to c1, king f8, bishop to e2, rook d8. We now defend like this, and bishop to a2 is the mistake. Levon Aronian didn't win this game through a tactic. You apply pressure and you make them make critical decisions. I would like to draw your attention to the time. Levon Aronian has 55 minutes. Andy Woodward has 56 seconds. The only move here is to play bishop takes b5, to give this up. And to play something like knight a2. This is the only way to draw the game. Because if these two pawns liquidate, game is a draw. Because you will never win 3-on-3 with equal material. Bishop to a2 trying to preserve this is bad. Because there's rook a8. And now where does your bishop go? Where does your bishop go? So we get d6. The rook defends. And now knight to b3. Very clever idea. If you take my bishop, I take your knight and almost basically promote this pawn. But now knight to e4. The rook comes out, but we grab here. The bishop escapes, but this position, even with the double pawns against this weakness, is completely winning for Levon Aronian. Rook a1, paralyzing the white bishop. The knight comes back to kick the rook out, but there's only so much you can do. You eventually have to give up the pawn, and you can go for the weaknesses, but it is never enough. And there are always one too many problems for white as we begin jostling, and it just becomes a problem. Even you can liquidate the rooks. Knight to c4 check. And just by the way, don't take this because then you undouble and then you will never stop this. Knight to a5, and eventually we get here. And this even, you might think is a draw. It's absolutely not, because I will defend the pawns, and this pawn will win me the game. This will liquidate, and I will just win. King to d5, check, and look at that. Boom. f4. And while you push, I win the necessary pawns, and I come back with bishop to d4. Yes, you can take these. Your knight can't get back to stop this pawn. And my bishop covers the promotion square. 51 minutes on the clock versus 56 seconds. Pressure cooker from Levon Aronian. Unbelievable games. Unbelievable games. I don't want to say the rest of the round was quiet, but the rest of the round was quiet. There was a draw between the two Sams, Sam Sevian and Sam Shankland. A very quiet draw between Wesley So and Hans Smoke Niemann. A draw between Awanda Liang and Aminbaidu Mishra, looking out for Mishra to see how he does, and then a draw between Dwarius Schwartz and Ray Robson. In round 2, we've got some interesting matchups, namely Fabiano Caruana versus Andy Woodward. Fabi obviously winning in round 1. He's playing Andy, who we're watching out for. Aminbaidu Mishra is got white for the first time. He's playing Sam Sevian. Hans Niemann plays Grigoriy Oparin. So looking to see how Hans gets on. And of course, Levon Aronian playing Awanda Liang. Going to be an interesting tournament, I definitely think. Going to be one to watch. And you'll see it all right here. Thank you so much for watching.